Hello, everyone, and welcome to the newest episode of the Read Right to Left podcast. I am G from Simply G, joined by my always wonderful co-host, Ray from Whimsical Pictures.
Hi, everybody.
And this month, Ray and I are joined by a fantastic guest, so excited and happy that she was able to join us, Ellie from Religiously Nerdy.
Hi, everyone.
And this month we will be talking about Manga About Manga. And that isn't me stuttering, but we are focusing on series that feature either the creation of manga, mangaka, things amongst that type, some which will be more so a non-fiction or autobiographical work, others which are more so focused on the character of the creator rather than the process. But all across the board, I think we have a lot to talk about, some fantastic questions from all of you. And thank you again for everyone who did send in their questions. So before we just get into it, if you would like to introduce yourself, Ellie, talk a little bit to who you are and what you do before we get started.
Of course, thank you. So again, my name is Ellie. I am 1/3 of a small little group called Religiously Nerdy, and we seek to create a space to discuss our interpretations of anime and pop culture from a little bit of the Islamic perspective, but mostly it's just reviews and then how we can take that pop culture and anime and kind of see it from a lens of Islam.
Mm-hmm.
But most of the time, I am the one that's reading all the manga. I've just gotten back into watching anime again because not all anime has a manga friend, so I have to catch up somehow. But I am the manga reader of the group.
And for those who are wanting to follow Ellie on social media, as well as follow the other two, and at Religiously Nerdy, I will leave the links to all of those in the description below if you're watching this on YouTube, or in the episode description if you're listening on one of our various podcasting platforms in which we are available. So, what do we all think about Manga About Manga?
I honestly, when I was asked about this, I had no idea that there was manga about manga. So when I looked it up, naturally the first thing across every website was Bakuman. So I read the first volume.
I'm sorry we set
Bakuman.
you such terrible homework, Ellie. but
you know, it wasn't even that bad of homework because it turns out there was anime that I had watched previously that was anime that was based on a manga that's about manga. And I had no idea, like Bookseller Honda-san and Monthly Girls Nozaki-kun. I had no idea. So this whole section that I had no idea about, I was like, oh, this is just great. I'm just chalking it up to slice of life.
Yeah. It's slice of life, but meta. And some of it's not slice of life at all. Some of it's much weirder.
Some of it's just plain depressing.
Yeah.
No.
It's another of G's favorite mangaka there.
We'll get to it. Is there any real standout manga about manga that you've read, Ray, or that you're aware of, that before we jump into questions, or do you just want to jump straight in?
It might come up in the questions, but reading through them, I'm not sure if it will, so I just wanted to give a quick shout out to Opus by Satoshi Kon, which is very weird and very meta, but it's, it's about a mangaka who, in the vein of, like, Kon's movies, if you've seen any of his films, he ends up coming across one of the characters that he's written, his protagonist, and he's not sure if it's like a dream or reality. He starts coming across more of his characters. His characters start responding to him in his work, and dreams and reality, manga and reality, are quickly just turned upside down and inside out and topsy-turvy. And, it's got quite an interesting perspective, I think, about what it means to be a creator. But I also think that, personally, I think it's the strongest one of Kohn's manga that I've read, but I would recommend his films over his manga, but I definitely think it's worth checking out.
Rather than give a particular series recommendation, although there are a couple, I could take this opportunity to just rep my fave Fumi Yoshinaga, because in Flower of Life, the two main characters are trying to become mangaka. They're part of the manga club, but I won't derail this early. I
instead read Flower of Life by Fumi Yoshinaga, everybody.
Well, yes. Well, you can't, because it's very hard to... Well, you can read the first three. The fourth one's very hard to find, but the rest is easy. But I will say that I think it's quite interesting in how, when reading, especially the autobiographical stuff, or... Well, the autobiographical stuff that's self-aware, and then also a lot of the titles that focus on mangakas as people telling their story more so than just the process of getting published, tend to have quite a self-deprecating or almost depressive feel. I think there's somewhat of an attitude within some of these titles of what mangaka are, or how mangaka see themselves. A good example is Downfall, from Inio Asano, which is just very bleak. That main character, he's really not doing well in life. Similarly, something like I'll Give It My All Tomorrow, which is a 5-volume series,
yes,
is just very focused on the main character, who is like, he wants to become a mangaka, but he also just doesn't have any personal drive, and so it's less about him thinking up stories and going through the publishing process, and more so everyone in his life saying you're a loser and you need to actually commit to something if you're wanting to do this, and him just kind of not getting that for a long time. Even something which is a little bit more self-focused, like A Zoo in Winter by Jiro Taniguchi, doesn't paint the mangaka lifestyle as anything particularly fabulous or wonderful or loving, or even anything that people should be following. It is quite cynical as to the industry, especially in the post-war period, when Taniguchi was starting out, and the various creators that he met over the course of his career, comparatively to the much beloved much derided on this podcast series that everyone does think of when they think Manga About Manga, Bakuman, wherein that
they're all fiery shonen protagonists,
fire shonen protagonists, but also the inherent pride in being
incredibly
a mangaka.
Smug Dude Bros, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
For that series has. It's quite an interesting divide, and so I think that's something we should talk a little bit about when we do get more into questions and especially the discussion.
Yeah, that made me think also of, like, Blank Canvas, because, like, Akiko Higashimura, by all means, is, like, absolutely thriving. Like, she clearly, loves her kids so much, and, like, she's, seems to be leading quite a happy life at this point. She's, made a real space for herself. But, like, when she writes about herself, it's all, like, self-deprecating. Like how she wasted her parents' money to go to art school, but she didn't actually have any drive to do anything. And it's all very funny, but it still has that tone of, like,
yeah,
who would be proud of, like, someone who ran off to become a mangaka of all things, So I definitely do see that through line, you know, a tendency to self-deprecate, I guess.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, I'm sure a lot of these creators have heard the same things from their parents and relatives that, you know, anyone who goes into an artistic field does, so it's not that surprising.
Yes.
Yes, the overwhelming just disappointment of why are you not going into STEM?
Yeah, why aren't you a doctor? Why aren't you a lawyer?
Why do you want to be an English major? I'm not understanding what you do.
Yeah, I know, sorry, my brain worms are speaking to me, and, it's just, like, I know she has, a lot of deeper issues with her mother than just, like, disappointment, but, like, Moto Hagio, she has a comment where, you know, she was talking about, like, how things have kind of cooled off between her and her parents at this point, but, like, her parents still introduce her to other people as a painter. Mm-hmm. And she was like, wow, they've made progress. They moved to something artistic. So.
Yes. No fun. I think that that's part of the self-deprecation is that self-preservation from having heard the same things over and over again and internalizing a lot of that talk around the industry, which again is an interesting comparison to everyone's favorite Shonen Jump series.
It's kind of like it shows kind of the dichotomy of, like, you know, I guess what we would call, like, what was nerd culture when I was growing up but was already becoming mainstream. And, like, you had nerds who, like, even now, it's, like, it's a dichotomy of, like, one moment you're just, like, super self-deprecating and, like, ironic, like, yeah, whatever, I guess I like this nerdy stuff, but then there's also, like, this weird pride that comes out of the same sense of self-preservation that's like, no, screw you, I'm a nerd and I'm proud of it.
Yes.
So I wonder if it's
that leads to gatekeeping
kind of.
Eventually.
Which
I was the nerd first.
Which we can talk about Bakuman and gatekeeping. Oh boy.
Oh boy.
But I'm sure we'll get into it.
Yeah. So would you like to do the questions, Ray?
Yeah. All right. I guess we'll start from the top. Rin at Rin Reads Manga asks us, what manga do you think depicted what it's like to work in the industry most accurately? I guess we'll answer that one first. She's asked two, but we'll start with that one. I feel like anything, like, autobiographical is going to be... So, like, you know, Blank Canvas or Insufficient Direction even, something comedic.
Azune Winter, A Drifting Life.
Yeah.
All of these.
Yeah, I was gonna name those too.
Sorry.
Yeah. I haven't read Even a Monkey Can Draw manga, so I can't comment on that one, but that's one people give a lot.
I can't comment much about it, but I was reading the synopsis of A Drifting Life, and I don't know, I kind of wanted to find it immediately, and I found it at my local library. But I wasn't able to snag it in time for this, so you can be able to speak on it. But it looked like, you know, especially, like, because I've read the first volume of I'll Give It My All Tomorrow, and it's just, you know, the draining, like, am I good enough for doing this? Or is this really what I want to do? Or maybe I should just do this anyway. It seems like a complete opposite. It's someone that's already successful in doing it, you know, to the best of their ability, and then having all of this stuff piled up on top of it. And I was really interested in seeing how that was going to turn out, you know, in that story.
And something that isn't actually a manga about manga, but is about the manga process, that I always think of when a creator's talking about themselves is with a lot of Shigeru Mizuki's kind of non-fictional works. the way that he talks about being an artist and his creative ideas, and obviously the impact that the war had on him, as well as his childhood and how that influenced his creation of Kitaro, comparatively to the war and his experience in Papua New Guinea informing his anti-war stuff, and his personal interest in history. I think that was always a really insightful look into how a person can create very different sorts of stories over their career into great success. And so I always think of his work when this sort of thing comes up as well.
Yeah, actually, that's a good point. He does always talk very insightfully about that stuff. I would say also, like, Nagata Kabi's ongoing series of unfortunate events. Obviously, that entire series is just her just, like, vomiting everything in her life at a wall and publishing it. So, I mean that in highly complimentary terms. But that is what it is. I mean, it's a very, like, it's just bleeding. Like, it's so raw and honest and emotional. But, she talks, very much in depth about the experience of, like, getting her manga published and, trying to break into the industry and only making it eventually with My Lesbian Experience with Loneliness, the first one of these, and then, like, growing in popularity, her parents finding out what she was really writing about, how this has affected, like, all of her personal relationships, etc., her relationship with fans and everything. So, I think that's also, like, for this very specific, like, almost, like, webcomic adjacent, like, autobiographical manga genre that has sprung up in the last few years and is just, like, dominating bookshelves, to be honest. I think hers is a very good insight into how all of that works. And I would also mention sort of more on the fine art side of things, but What is Obscenity by Roku Danashiko is another autobiographical manga about, like, her series of lawsuits related to the sort of pussy artwork that she's quite known for. That one is also quite interesting. I know she's apparently, like, really not a very good person, but I really enjoy that book a lot. And again, it's just straight up autobiography, so all about, like, her relationship with her little fan base, and versus, like, the responses to her work after it ended up in the news for this lawsuit. And the things that ultimately led her to move out of Japan permanently and been with her husband, who's, like, Scandinavian or something. I don't remember where he's from. I don't know. I don't remember where they are right now in the world. Europe. Okay, the other one from Rin is anything you're curious about that isn't really depicted in the series that you've read. I would guess related to, like, working in the industry, etc., etc.
I feel like I want to say something, but I feel like because I haven't read them or haven't read enough of them, that I wouldn't be able, like, I feel like there's already going to be a manga about it.
That's okay.
Just say it anyway.
Yeah, we can, if there is, we might be able to recommend
shout it
something.
Into the void.
I'm curious about, and this is probably more done in Bakuman, that I don't want to cause brouhaha, but, like, I want to know more of back and forth between editor and mangaka, because that's just something that I'm super interested in, outside of just, like, because I know, and I'll give it my all tomorrow, it's the brief conversation of, hey, well, this is good, but try doing something different, or this isn't really that good. I want to know if there's more in-depth conversations between mangaka and editor.
Mm-hmm. I was also gonna add the editorial process. There is a series, one of my guilty pleasures, which is The World's Greatest First Love, where
That's the next question, G.
Yes, so I'll talk a little bit more on it there. But that series obviously has kind of a high bar. It's a BL series. It's by Shungaku Nakamura, who is not my favorite creator, but I just have such a weak spot for World's Greatest First Love. And, you know, you're not gonna be able to recommend a very saucy, tropey BL to general manga fans as like, oh yeah, this talks about the editorial process. So yeah. I do think that like a more general manga, quote unquote, more mainstream manga about editors and their impact and influence on manga creation would be really interesting, a bit more insightful as well.
Yeah, it's I agree, because like you know, you get so many like interesting tidbits of so many like different kinds of editor artist relationships from like author notes and like the 1/5 columns that you get in shoujo manga, and it's like I always just want to get a little even more of a peek behind the curtain, like a full story about it would be so fun.
I want to know. I want to know what you're talking about. Tell me now. Tell me your creative process.
Cool? I want like a series that like, you know, it can be like, you know, super like fiery, started from the bottom, now we're here kind of like thing that Bakuman was trying to go for ostensibly, but like I want it to be about an assistant, someone who starts out working as an assistant to somebody.
That would be so I would read the crap out of that. Yes.
And like really gets to hone their skills under like a mentor figure who's a more popular established mangaka, and then like break off on their own. I think that'd be cool.
Yeah, that would be really good, because those sorts of storylines you see a little bit as well, wherein if there is a mangaka character, there is often an assistant working on their own stuff. They are trying to get published, but we only ever really see like, oh, hey, I put a submission in for this competition, or like, oh, I got an honorable mention or whatever. We never see the process of them doing that. Which I think is a little bit of wasted potential. Might exist out there, but if it does, we haven't seen it in English.
Also, like, the drama around the formation of the Year 24 group would make a great manga, but also I don't want to subject anyone who was actually in the Year 24 group to that, so... Especially given the two most prominent members are not on speaking terms. But it would be a really good manga, though. Yeah, next question. Mentioned it before, but this is from @365 Days of 801. Directed at G. I assume you will dedicate a full 5 minutes to talk about your guilty pleasure, The World's Greatest First Love. I learned more about how depressing it would be to work as a manga editor from this manga than any other. Go, G.
She's not wrong. So The World's Greatest First Love, as I mentioned earlier, is a Shungaku Nakamura of Junjo Romantica and Hybrid Child fame series. Set in the same world as Junjo Romantica as well. They don't really have much crossover, but the main character is Ritsu Onodera, who during middle school, early high school, had a big fat crush on one of his upperclassmen, one of his senpai, who he would watch in the library all of the time. They date for a very brief but passionate period, but because of a falling out, a misunderstanding, he moves to the UK to finish his schooling. They never really get back in contact. It's been 10 years. Ritsu's now jaded on love because his first love just went so terribly. Anyway, so the main premise is that Ritsu's family owns a publishing company, or the publishing house. So he's always wanted to work in books. He loves novels, loves literature. And so when he returns to Japan, he starts a job at his company, his family's company, as an editor for a novelist, right? Which is a very difficult job. It is something that, kind of gets forgotten about, but editors in all written media are very important. Anyway.
Bless editors.
Exactly. So, but because it's his family's company, a lot of his coworkers kind of see him as riding on coattails. He's the golden child. He's getting all of this work that he wouldn't be if he wasn't the son of the CEO. And in order to spite them all and to prove them wrong, he decides to leave his family's company, publishing house, and go to one of the rival companies, hoping to become a novel editor like he was. So he applies for a new job at this publishing house. He gets accepted, and he's super excited to start working there. But he has been informed there's no real availability or need for editors in the literature section of this publishing house, and instead he has been directed to the shoujo manga division. So now Ritsu, who knows absolutely nothing about manga, because he really doesn't read it, and especially not girls like love rom-com stories, considering he is so jaded on love himself, he's now been put in this position wherein he has to, figure out the best way to help creators create these love stories, these first love stories that are so popular in shoujo manga magazines. And as to the main plot of the story, along with all of that, is he has this kind of bossy boss who's pain in the ass but very good at his job, whom he, over the course of a very short period, realizes is the boy who broke his heart 10 years ago.
Oh my gosh.
And they reconnect. They realize that their breakup initially was this huge misunderstanding, but Ritsu's this other guy, this older boy, has been in love with him for all of this time and just wasn't able to find him. He's been really self-destructive, and he's finally getting back on his feet and blah blah blah, and he's fantastic at what he does. He's a really good manga editor. He's the head editor, and he totally turned around this magazine, which wasn't doing very well financially. And so despite understanding that all of this is a misunderstanding, or was a misunderstanding, Ritsu is nothing if not stubborn. So he's like, well, just because you still feel the same way, I don't, but we all know he secretly does. And then it's the slowest slow burn in where these two are having very regular sex, but also Ritsu's like, but that doesn't mean I'm in love with you. And and then manga happens. So,
and also they suck lots of dick in the editorial office.
They're not really usually in the office. Because they also.
I remember one scene.
I never said they never did, but they're also neighbors. Their apartments are right next to each other. They just never had.
Because of course they are.
Well, they never realized because they were both editors on terrible schedules, so they never ran into each other.
Of course not. Of course
this is the greatest K-drama that's ever happened to me.
Well, exactly. And then it's so more so than the romance, which, as I said, is obviously a huge chunk of it. This, and Ritsu going, oh well, just cause we hang out and have a lot of sex and have meals together.
His dick.
doesn't mean that I'm in love with him. And then we have a countdown of 137 days till Ritsu says that or admits he loves. There's just and the timer always resets as well. You're like, oh god damn it, just freaking. Anyway.
I want the entire set for this. I need all the volumes of this because now I'm invested.
There is 14 volumes in English from Sublime. Both seasons and the OVA are also available on DVD from Funimation. So you're welcome.
Thank you, madam.
But ultimately, the more so focused on the manga element, it despite being kind of a very raunchy, trashy BL with a bunch of tropes, it does go quite in depth with the process of being a manga editor, especially considering that Ritsu, our main character, just has no experience, and so he's constantly having to learn, and thus we learn alongside our main character. Also, you know, all of the side couples are also like manga editors. There's a manga editor who's dating the mangaka who he edits for. There's another one who's dating an art student who is the best couple, just by the way. But yeah, it's really it's good. I like it. It's not high art, but as I said, there's
it's art.
There's a warm spot in my heart for it, and I just can't quit World's Greatest First Love. But yeah, it really does focus a lot on, or does give good insight as to how editors help edit a work, how they see and reframe things, how they give suggestions to creators to make a work better, and how the process itself and how editing itself is a very demanding job that can lead to... Everyone knows that mangaka work like terrible hours, right? They don't sleep, they work all the time, they have to hit deadlines. The editors do as well, but they're completely reliant on when mangaka get their work in for them to even fully finish their work. So they're working even closer to the wire to hit deadlines and things like that. So, plus all of the actual office politics, having to call printers to say, can we push back the printing schedule X amount of hours, or trying to figure out what to do if someone does miss a deadline. There's a lot of really... And also organizing things like store events, mangaka signing events, things like that is really interesting and really fun to see.
Right on.
I am in love with this and I haven't even read it yet.
Congratulations, G. You've hooked her.
I'm glad I could be so convincing.
It only took 5 minutes, but you did it. I'm happy to be a part.
There you go. 365801's gonna be happy too. Alright. Next question is from Ed Apollo Gray. When I was younger, I loved Bakuman because of the depictions of making manga. Almost 10 years later, and looking back, it's terrible. I mean, yeah. True. Are there any actual manga that portray manga making or even writing in general that you would recommend? Yeah. I mean, we just did. So
I would also...
I don't know.
Add... I mean, we talked about quite a few. I'd add things like Yoshino Zuikara, The Frog in the Well Does Not Know the Ocean, which is a newer series from the creator of Bakuman, which is about a mangaka kind of struggling to create... he was struggling to create a new series, and then once he got like this smash hit with what is ostensibly the in-universe Bakuman, he then struggles with a lot of how to keep that story interesting, how he deals with a lot of like imposter syndrome, which I think again we talked a little bit about as well, and not really understanding why anyone likes his work, constantly apologizing for things being boring or not very good, or just assuming that it will be cancelled at some point. And I think that's, I mean, it is very much in line with Bakuman if you enjoyed that series, and if you enjoyed Honda. The main character of this series is quite similar, but Honda has a lot of like pride to a fault. The guy in Yoshino Zuikara has a lot of the self-deprecation to a fault. It's fun. It's funny. It's very well done. All of the kids because he also lives in like a very small town area. All of the kids all of the people who are aware he's a mangaka are great. All of the like old people in this town who are like, oh yeah, you good luck. And the guy who works as kind of his assistant, kind of his, just friend who does things around the house. It's great. It's a good time. And it's only 3 volumes long, so much shorter than Bakuman, if that's something you care about.
On the opposite end of things, in terms of a manga about writing in general, specifically literature, Utsubora, Story of a Novelist, is kind of a psychosexual thriller almost. That deals a lot with like plagiarism and again the nature of creation, contextualizing like the characters that you've made, the characters other people have made that have spoken to you versus like reality, real relationships. And it's gorgeous because it's Asumiko Nakamura. So. Gosh, it's been a long time since I've read that one, but it's well worth a read, so.
Yes, indeed.
That one.
I also, if you want something similar in idea to Bakuman, without all of the horrible sex, or as much of the horrible sexism, but still kind of the Jump adoration, a short cut recent Jump series, Time Paradox Ghostwriter, which is about a guy who one day, I don't really remember how it happens, but his microwave really massively fucks up somehow.
Yeah, I remember this manga. I stopped reading it. I was so confused.
Well, he manages to be sent an issue of Shonen Jump from the future. He's a struggling mangaka. He loves Shonen Jump stuff. He's always wanted to be published in Jump. He gets a copy of some future edition from multiple, 10 years in the future, right? And there's a fantastic debuting series in there that he loves, and he kind of plagiarizes the idea with not really understanding or not really comprehending, because why would you believe that actually happened, right? So he in his haze of excitement, he rewrites the first chapter and submits it thinking it was all a dream, as you would if your microwave just started spitting out copies of Jump.
Hot fire.
And so he submits it, he gets picked up, it's beloved, and then he realizes that no, actually, it's happening. He keeps getting copies from Jump from the future that are giving him the chapters of this future series that doesn't exist in our timeline yet. So he inadvertently, he realizes that he wants to try and create his own story, but none of his ideas are as good, and so he keeps borrowing from this existing but not yet existing manga. It's short at only 14 chapters. I don't think it was very popular in Japan because of the plagiarism element. But it is about a guy working to become a Shonen Jump author, working with, or the struggle of finding a hit series and a hit idea. And, there's other stuff that he gets introduced to the creator of the series, her much younger form, blah, blah, blah. So there's other stuff going on. And it ends up being not very much about manga whatsoever, but it is interesting. And does feature a prominent female character who is very good at manga compared to, its predecessor, Bakuman. So.
I would say with dealing a lot with, like, young artists and, like, the process of creation on, like, a thematic level.
Mm-hmm.
This is going way off, but, we talk about this series pretty often, but I feel like, the sort of witch school premise kind of, like, makes people not realize that it is very fundamentally also about, like, creation and art and being an artist, but Witch Hat Atelier, I think, is one of the most, like, insightful explorations of, like, young artists learning their craft and from, like, a lot of different perspectives, and, you know, accessibility in art, and, you know, what it means to create and how to get better and master, you know, your chosen medium. So, you know, if you're interested in that kind of thematic content, I think that Witch Hat Atelier is a must-read.
Well, it's a must-read anyway, but additionally...
I mean, it's a must-read anyway, but also, like, specifically if you're interested in those thematic avenues, I feel like just hearing the premise of Witch Hat Atelier, you wouldn't necessarily know that it goes in those thematic directions, but it very much does, and it does so very well. You know, obviously the creator of that is a very accomplished illustrator. So, Ellie, were there any other series about, like, writing or making manga that you wanted to touch on?
So there's a webtoon that I'm reading. I don't know if this counts.
No, go
But
for
there's
it.
a webtoon that I'm reading, and I initially started reading it because it's a romance about an editor who is really in love with this one author, and she ends up being his editor, but like the works that he's written have moved like so many thousands of people, but there's one piece of work that he hasn't quite finished that has an attachment onto like a past love that he hasn't really let go of. And I always wondered, you know, like how many, like when I read it, I think about how many missed opportunities we probably, or how much manga we haven't had the chance to read because people or like mangaka just haven't either had the opportunity to get it out there, or it hasn't, like, let's say the Time Paradox manga actually succeeded. I want to know how far it would have gone into, like what would have come after. I want to know if there's more manga like that. I want to know if there's more manga that's been hidden gems that are just flat out just haven't been finished.
Yeah.
I want them to finish them. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. Finish them. We want to read them. There are people out there that want to read them.
I'm sure a lot of them really wish they had the chance to finish them.
Gosh. Before We Knew It. It's called Before We Knew It. But it's mostly romance, but there's a lot of editorial spots in it where it talks, because she's doing such heavy lifting. And it kind of goes into like the mental taxing part of just keeping your mangaka up to par. Just being like, hey, no, you have this creative process. Like, let me help you, guide you through it. You're doing all of this work besides it. Like, you are basically their therapist, getting them through. Like, hey, buddy, I need you to finish this.
Yeah.
But it's also your job.
Yeah.
I wish them well.
It's definitely, like, it's a very weird, like, relationship, isn't it? The manga editor and manga creator.
Yeah.
It does feel very, like, weirdly personal, even if it's not, like, you know, a romance series.
Yeah.
But, like, in real life, the way that, like, mangaka talk about their editors, it's like, you know, they're constantly, like, buying shit for each other, like, fucking getting coffee in the middle of the night. Like, it sounds wild. I can't imagine how awful it is if it's a bad fit.
Gosh, I wouldn't want to be no. If it's ever a bad fit, that's just like crushing a dream, crushing repeatedly over and over again.
I mean,
It brings me back, like in Bakuman, where his uncle gets where he's telling the story that his uncle tells him, and he's like, yeah, the editor like shredded the guy's manga, the storyboard. I was like, I would have lost my absolute crap, especially afterwards. And he's like, it was good, but I knew you could do better. I had so many problems with that.
there's a pretty prominent storyline in Bakuman later on in the series about how they have an editor who's just really ill-suited to their work and is constantly making just terrible suggestions on improvements and whatever. Which I think that's, I mean, I'm sure it's played up again to lead into how brilliant of geniuses our boy
they're
creators
so brilliant,
are.
And he's just like a stupid dude bro who doesn't understand. He only reads dumb comics for dumb people.
But I do think that that's possibly a real challenge. A series that does it much better, to much more hilarity, is, of course, Monthly Girls Nozaki-kun, wherein that one editor just wants
that one guy who just loves Tanuki more than anything. Like, you know what would make this so much better? Like, it's great. You're doing great, but you know what would make it so much better?
Tanuki.
Put a Tanuki in this scene.
Tanuki right here. We need you know what? Actually, make the main character like a Tanuki that just all of the time they turn into a human for like some scenes, but it honestly make them a Tanuki most of the time. Yeah. Everyone will love it.
Yeah.
And then of course, Nozaki's relationship with his editor, his current editor, is much better, but the editor is just like, this kid comes on way strong. Like, he thinks that Nozaki's like legitimately in love with him, and he's just like, how do I talk to this kid?
I love Monthly Girls so much.
It's so good. It's so good. I love that series. Okay. So, just for fun, because I'm sure fans of the podcast have been waiting for this, somebody responded to @Apollo Gray with another question, which is technically not directed at us, but at the question asker. But @Seabach says, never read Bakuman. What makes the depiction terrible?
Well, my friend, where do we start?
Oh boy. As a person that only read one volume, I was very confused. The love interest confused me because why are we like, not a single time was like, you saw, there are no words to express how confused and frustrated I was at that. It wasn't even like a good frustration. It was like but what the heck? And then this whole, he seems almost mightier than thou. Like, yeah, my uncle was a manga editor. Like, dude, like 4 chapters ago you were talking about how he committed suicide. Now you're like, he was the greatest. Just,
he gave everything for his art.
Oh, so traumatic.
And they get to just start out with this incredibly awesome, like, office studio. But we're supposed to believe that they're, he's a legacy creator with, like, this super famous mangaka dad. So it's like, we're supposed to believe that they're starting from the bottom.
But
like,
that's the thing, is that the thing is,
right?
His uncle wasn't even like, he had this studio.
He wasn't even that good.
He didn't even have like a super popular series. How did he have? Why did he have all of that stuff? It's just,
and even at one point the question was asked, like, "Hey, who's paying for this?
Don't worry about it. It's fine. Don't worry."
I don't know. Maybe my grandpa, maybe my parents. I don't know.
It
God, oh.
So more so to your first point, Ellie. For the two people who may be listening in the audience who doesn't know what Bakuman is, it is a 20-volume Shonen Jump series about two teenage boys who want to become popular manga creators. One is the artist, one is the writer. The main character is really the
specifically
artist.
in Weekly Shonen Jump. If it's not Jump, then they don't want anything to do with it.
Yes.
Won't even consider for half a second another magazine.
And so in order, but also, so they want to do this, but also because of his uncle previously being a failed mangaka, our main character is kind of not initially that thrilled. He doesn't really agree to it until he finds out that the girl that he has a big crush on is wanting to become a seiyuu, a voice actress.
Which we get like a whole spiel from the writer kid about how like she's decided she wants to be a voice actress because that's like a smart dream for a girl to have, because girls should just have like cute, pleasant, adorable, girlish dreams to attract men.
Girls don't need to know how to think about anything. This is easy work for her.
They're ultimately going to get married, and that's the point of their life, so they don't have to think that far into the future. They should just have a dream that's attractive to men.
Yes.
And he isn't even trying to like get her like information. He's like, no, I already know. We're gonna go to a different school because she's gonna be mine. That's my girl. Boy, if you don't get out of here.
And so he agrees if he's, well, I don't even know like fully how they agree. There's something, he takes her to his house, which is weird. They like rock up in the middle of the night and like rings the bell, and she's like, oh, hey. Well, no, she's much more, she doesn't sound like me. I mean, she's cute and you know, the idea of what a perfect teenage girl is. Hello. What are you doing here? We know that she has a big crush on this boy as well. And so she's like, oh, well, I think he's asking if she wants to do the thing, like wants to become the voice actress. And she's like, yes. And then that's when he decides, okay, well, I'm going to become a mangaka with this guy here. I don't know if we were friends before this, but now we are going to be...
But we're friends now.
We're friends now. We're going to be partners in crime. And truly it is
Ride
a
or
crime.
die.
But when we get a super popular series in Jump, which inevitably we will, although it's not inherently framed as that early on.
Isn't it like when our series gets an anime?
Yes.
You are going to voice the heroine, and that's when we're going to get married. And we're not going to kiss or anything before that. We're not even allowed to like look at each other.
We can text sometimes. We're not going to actually spend any time together, even if it takes 20 years. The dream is for us to become a big Shonen Jump success, get an anime adaptation, and you voice the female character. Then our dreams will both have come true, and we will get married. So if she doesn't get the voice role, also like then they can't get. This is just such the most.
Well, that was like a whole like plot point. Was like they have to get a series that not only does she have to succeed as a voice actress to a certain level, but they also have to get popular enough that when their series gets an anime, they have enough sway to request an actress.
Yes.
And it was ridiculous for me because he was doing the exact same thing that his uncle was doing. basically saying, why didn't they ever just talk? Going up to the, I don't know.
Oh.
Should I continue?
Well, because his uncle was never in the wrong, you see.
Also,
his uncle was a hero.
Also, his uncle was in love with her mother, which is freaking weird.
His uncle was in love with the mother, and then they asked him out, like, how come you guys never, like, actually talked? Like, you guys knew where each other were. Like, why? You knew what each other was doing. And they're doing the exact same thing. Like, I just don't understand. How are you so confused about the matter at hand? And then, oh my god, I only read one volume.
Yeah. Yeah.
And even then, it was like, it wasn't like it was a drag to read on, but it was a drag to read on.
It gets even worse because it does become a drag because it's just text dump the manga, to be perfectly honest.
God, it's so much.
It's
yeah, and then okay, so from reading the first volume, you would have met not just the heroine of the series, but also the like ace student, like female character who like the two main boys
the immediately dismiss
because she's smart, but she's actually dumb. Yeah, because she's like she doesn't just shut up and realize that a woman's purpose is to get married and that's where she's gonna be happy. She actually wants a career. So
and none of the guys like her because she's too intimidating.
And none of the guys like her because she's too intimidating. And I'm like, yeah, well, that's because high school boys suck.
Every time they showed her, she had a smug face on, and I was like, you made her seem like she's a freaking villain. What is she? She hasn't done anything.
Yeah,
she doesn't even have a line.
Maybe she's got a smug look because she's happy, you know? She's got a goal that she's
successful.
For, okay?
But also, she legitimately does become a villain later on in the series.
The smart girl ends up coming back as, like, somebody who's trying to make it as a writer.
No, she's a popular, artist, right? She's a successful and popular novelist. She's done her goals. Yeah. But she finds out that the boy who ostensibly hates her, but that she's still crushing on, again, since middle school. I don't know what's wrong with these people. Grow up, seriously. But that he's a mangaka, and, well, because she loves him, but also they're, like, super competitive, because she's the top in the class, and this asshole is, like, number 2, or the top boy in the class, or whatever the hell it is.
Yeah. Isn't it the writer kid?
Yes. And so she's like... Yeah. Well, I love you and all of this, but also, I want to beat you, right? So, because we're competitive. So she's like, I shall become a mangaka too and prove that, you know, you're wasting your talents, or anyone can do this, or something. I don't even remember the reasoning. But
that's not how any of this works.
But, as we have learnt from Bakuman, lady don't know how to write for boy. Only boy can write for boy. Lady, no idea for boy.
I want to just, like, sick every single woman working for Shonen Jump and all of its subsidiaries right now on these two men who made this series. That's not even getting outside of Shonen Jump. But,
it was the more...
Yeah. And then there's two... I'm sorry. Just, like... I always have to bring up, because the two female mangaka that we meet, who are working in Shonen Jump, because it's that girl who, you know, never stops being, like, portrayed as, like, this horrible villain. Because
massive
she,
bitch.
You know, is proud of how smart she is. Yeah, fucking bitch, like... You know, ball crusher. You know, she's fucking...
God!
I mean, that's the vibe, though, right? She's like... She's a bitch in that specific, like, super old school way of, like... You know, she dares to think that she's smarter than a man, you know?
How dare she?
She's just like a fucking killjoy to men. You know... And, yeah, but then there's this other chick who's, like, really sweet, and she's come over from did she come over from shoujo, or she just, like, ends up leaving for shoujo?
She is an incredibly successful shoujo mangaka. Super, super popular, done very well for herself. Now she's wanting to write a shonen manga, which, fair enough, a lot of people do. Right, like there are a lot of mangaka across various demographic barriers.
You know,
especially the women.
Try something new. So she writes this series, which, by the way, we get snippets of everybody's series, and hers seems like the only one I would actually want to read.
That's so bad. Oh my gosh.
I guess the odder one I would read that one. But that guy, he's obsessed with her, right? And he, like, stalks her. Anyway,
the
there's so
The
many
writer?
problems.
No, the assistant. There's a guy who just becomes obsessed with her.
Oh, no, there's the assistant who stalks her, but then there's also the one that she ends up with, right?
Oh,
the neat guy.
Yeah, the guy who's
The creepy
like
one.
just fell into manga. He has the weird gag.
Yeah,
comedy.
yeah.
Yes.
And he has the weird gag comedy. I'd
Orders
probably read his
11.
comic book. Yeah. But
Wow. It truly gets wild. It truly gets wild.
He ends up with her because he just stalks her persistently enough that eventually she thinks it's sweet. As opposed to the other guy who was stalking her but dared to be ugly while doing it.
Well, dare to be fat and ugly.
Oh my god.
Ray.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
No.
I mean,
you know, we love to
both
see
were
some
bad
fat phobia.
options. At least the guy who she did end up with was actually successful. I mean, maybe that's the plus.
You know, at least he got that cash money. You know.
Ugh, God.
But anyway, I was gonna say, like, her whole, obviously all of this with these two love interests question mark is very sexist and misogynistic. But also, like, they just never stop dumping on her work for being too girly. And ultimately it's like, oh, she didn't have what it took to make shonen manga because she only knows how to make girly comics because girls only know how to make girly comics.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's the literal takeaway. I'm like, the number of women, not just who excel in, like, across multiple demographics, but also the number of women who never once had interest in making shoujo or josei comics and just stayed wildly successful in shonen and or seinen. You know?
Yeah, because Bakuman still exists in the same universe as Shonen Jump, so they would still, and they were talking about, you know, the boy mangas, and so that means all these other manga that have had women mangakas also existed in the same universe.
Yeah, but they're not good enough.
It's wild, man.
They're not good enough, obviously, because of our inferior brain. I think.
Yeah.
Something. I don't know. They're just such geniuses that, you know, it's...
Rumiko Takahashi, you know? Hiromu Arakawa. Don't know who they are.
No. They don't exist.
Who are they? We don't know her. She doesn't go here.
Yeah. She doesn't go to Shonen Jump, specifically, so...
So, you know, fake fans.
Fake fans. So yeah, that's Bakuman, and it's, bad.
It's really bad, actually. It's super bad. Don't read it. And also, it's just, like, really badly written. Like, outside of all the sexism,
yes,
outside of the fucking god complex, and our main heroes just being these amazing prodigies who get everything they've ever wanted... It's just way too long. Like, it should not have been 20 volumes. There's no reason that it should have been 20 volumes. It gets really repetitive. As I said, it's text dump the series wherein characters will just, soliloquy the entire time to each other. And you're like, oh, just shut up. Like, literally, just stop talking to each other. I don't know how...
Neither of the main characters has ever once had a single relatable human emotion.
And
at all.
They both end up with beautiful wives who don't have any personality or anything that interests them. And if that isn't...
The one that the writer ends up with...
Oh, poor Kaya.
Oh my god. The way that, like... Yeah, she was, like, started off as, like, this super cool tomboy... But then becomes, like, you know, the naggy housewife, and that's, like, her role for the rest of the series. Because they get married, like, at 18, and it's really stupid.
It's really stupid. It's really bad. Her family is supporting them 100%. Everything she does is, like, in support of their dreams. She tries to become a web novelist, And he's like, why don't I just write it for you? I'm like, dude, that's the worst. That's the worst thing you could ever say. And then she ultimately is like, oh, I'm not as good at this as I want to be. My dream will just be to support them. And I'm like, wow, I hate this.
Oh my god.
I hate this.
Honey.
Yes.
No.
Yeah. And then also, like, the rival kid,
Eiji,
he's just L but worse.
L, but
they just
more
made L
screechy.
again, but he sucks.
Ew.
Yeah, he's screechier, and he doesn't have, like, you know, the whole, like,
smart,
world famous detective thing going for
smart.
him.
He's
whole,
just
like trying to solve a murder thing.
Yeah, he's an idiot savant for manga. He has L's, like, I don't know, peculiarities, but with the personality of live action Ed from Cowboy Bebop. Like, it's really...
Oh my god.
It's really
topical, G. Topical.
I know things. I keep up to date with the Twitter going on.
That's gonna be out of date by the time this podcast goes up.
I don't care.
I haven't even watched it yet. Oh my god.
But yeah.
I heard
bad series is bad. Don't read it.
It feels good to get that off of my chest.
I feel like that was just building up, just waiting to explode.
Yeah. That's like the whole arc of our podcast from episode 1 to now.
That's all, folks. We're good.
The slow burn romance between us and hatred for Bakuman.
God.
Anyway, next we've got a couple questions from @LoomRanmaYasha, friend of the show.
Previous guest. Wonderful.
Previous guest and wonderful. Yes. Thoughts on the strengths of fictional stories about manga creation to autobiographical works and vice versa in terms of showcasing the career. So, fictional stories about manga creation versus autobiographical works about creators. I mean, ostensibly, I do like that, you know, something that goes like a fictional route can have a very, like, clean arc to it. Like, again, I do think that's what Bakuman was attempting to do, is, like, make manga creation exciting by making it like a, you know, a shonen manga arc. Which I don't think is a bad idea. I just think it was done very badly in that series.
Yeah. Similarly, I think it's also, with fiction, it's a lot easier to lean into the kind of peculiarities of your particular industry. Namely, like, Nozaki-kun really does play up the shoujo manga kind of tropes and how that plays into Nozaki's creating of that manga. Similarly, Kakushi Goto, My Dad's Secret Ambition, which has a recent, I think it has a digital release from Kodansha. It also has an anime. That's the artist of that did Sayonara Zetsubou Sensei, and that's about a guy who is kind of a ero manga artist, and he's hides that from his young daughter because that's not appropriate, and he also doesn't want her to know about that, so hilarity ensues. And so again, it kind of plays more into the, and Flower of Life, again, to bring up my favorite, talks a lot about that early struggle of being, like, a kid trying to make something and trying to find early success with manga. And, sorry, I just remembered another one that everyone go read it. It's Look Back, from the creator of Chainsaw Man. It's a 150 page one shot. It's on Shonen Jump right now. It's fantastic. I think that's quite self-reflective, but also very fictionalized in just how Fujimoto, the mangaka, looks at their career and the popularity of stuff like Chainsaw Man and Fire Punch, but also tying it into the relationship, the fictionalized, or the characters of the series, the relationship between two teenage girls who are both artists who both love creating stories and do for a very long time, slowly go their separate ways, and ultimately are separated by the tragic death of one of them. It's so good. Go read it. But comparatively to an autobiographical stuff, that obviously has a lot more personal insight, a lot more nuance when it comes to these creators, whom sometimes you can forget the person behind your favorite series and your favorite characters and their actual life, the impact that their work has on the people and people around them, the way they live their lives, the experiences they've had, is just a much more maybe relatable in some ways experience.
Yes. Also, if you're fictional, you can go weird. So,
yeah.
Opus, welcome to the NHK. That's fun. I like weird. I would like somebody to take their autobiography and just make it weird as shit.
Sounds like a plan for you, right? You can make your own. Honestly,
my own
most likely person, Shintaro Kage.
Oh my gosh. That would be insane. He's insane. He's an insane person. Yeah, I mean, he definitely seems to think that life is one big joke, so.
Wow.
Cool. Number 2 from @Limran Mayasha. Most surprising, I can't believe this really happens. True thing about manga publishing that you've read in a manga about manga.
This is more so for the editing side, and is something that, again, comes from World's Greatest First Love. So I do think that it's pretty accurate depiction of the editorial side. And I think it's definitely changed over the last several years, and especially with COVID, but with how much of manga is still done through analog. There's a lot of creators now who do create stuff digitally, but oftentimes even editors get pulled in to put paste text into speech bubbles and things like that.
Yeah.
It's very much not the streamlined digital process, or wasn't the streamlined digital process even up until very, very recently. And I'm sure for some creators it's still not a streamlined digital process. And also with how much the poor editorial has to beg and plead with the printers how much they can get away with, how much extra time they can eke out for creators, and the ongoing relationship with printers is really interesting and insightful. So that's my thing.
I always think anything that I learn about the rookie prizes and the submission process for those, as well as the judging process, and assigning an editor to the winners, etc., etc. I always think that's very interesting, because I think it's a very unique thing to manga specifically, and it's been around as a way to get new creators into the industry since the 70s, so that always interests me. Yeah, I read this question and my worms attacked again, and I just was thinking about, the books, they're not manga, but the books, autobiographical books written by Hagio and Takemiya, and just how wild and anarchical the first early years of shoujo manga were. It's just wild.
I guess for me, just the interactions with the editor. Like, I'm not sure how intense the conversations between editor and mangaka actually are. So from the few that I've read, I mean, obviously with like Monthly Girls and Zaki-kun is different, but like from Bakuman and other small series, it just seems that it gets really intense. I
Mm-hmm.
want to know if it's really just harshness being spewed at these mangakas all the time, just for them to come up with something. I mean, they'll come up with something amazing, but just for them to just get told like, oh well, this is bad, but like, and like, I guess I'm just reading it in a tone that seems disrespectful, maybe.
I think Bakuman is honestly like a bad place to look for this. Um, I think that, you know, that series very much like treats editors like almost like boss monsters in a little bit of a way. Like opponents to the shonen protagonist's success, even when it's like a good editor.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I think the first editor was treated more as like a mentor figure, but um, I mean, from what I read from like interviews and like especially the author's notes and 1/5 columns, it does seem like greatly variable. But ultimately, more than anything, it just strikes me as like a partnership between two artists. Like they
Mm-hmm.
both want to create the most successful and interesting thing that they can. The main conflict being that, you know, the mangaka is going to want to make this beautiful piece of art, right?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Versus the editor always having to, you know, even though they want to create a beautiful piece of art as well, you know, they also have to think about trends within the magazine they're publishing for and what's going to sell the most. Um, but I mean, yeah, it really. I'm not pretending to be like an expert on this either. It just like, it always strikes me as so interesting because it seems like,
Mm-hmm.
you know, if you've got a really good relationship with your editor, that is someone that you can just like stay up late into the night talking about life with. Like,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and like your philosophy on art. Like, um, it really is like just so much closer of a relationship, I think, in a lot of cases than we really get the chance to see from the reader end of things. And that's not always the case. I think that's like the best case scenario. I'm sure there's plenty of creators who feel very distant from their editors. I'm sure there's plenty who are openly antagonistic with their editors. Um, but in general, it seems like they have to kind of understand each other as artists, almost.
No, thank you for that. I'm sure that there's like, once I get outside of Bakuman, I'm sure there will be like a wild array of just wonderful things that I can just take away from this and just get the nasty taste out of
You
my
can
mouth.
only go up from here. You can only go
Yeah,
up from
you know, started from the bottom,
here.
can only go
Here we
up.
go.
Somewhat like our shonen protagonists. Started at the bottom
Yeah.
Mm,
Made it to the very top. But yeah, I think that the most insight I get between that with that editor artist relationship really is coming from like author's notes and 1/5 columns more than anything else.
yeah.
More than like a specific series. It's just like paying attention to what they're really saying in like the little author columns.
Yeah.
Which means that I have a lot more insight into like what shoujo artists are saying because shoujo magazines have like the columns every chapter, whereas shonen does not.
Yeah.
But,
They do.
yeah, there's a really interesting and long history to those 1/5 columns as well, but we don't have time to get into it. That era is my bread and butter. It's also related to the fan letter culture within Takarazuka. It's all connected. Circles within circles, fires within fires. Anyway. Now Next question is B at Bacchus Vines asks, what kind of mangaka do you wish to see depicted in manga? More women or queer characters? Yes.
Yes. Yes and yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I will say that aside from Blank Canvas, which is Akiko Higashimura's autobiographical manga about her life, there's also Still Sick, which is a Yuri manga. So queer female characters, wherein one half of that duo is a mangaka who's been struggling over her work, and then her relationship with her co-worker kind of helps rekindle her interest in creating manga. So that, if for those who are interested in that, it's a 3-volume series from Tokyo Pop. It's alright, it's worth a read. Also things that are more so focused on like doujin culture obviously is a lot more reliant on female creators, because they typically take up a lot of, especially BL doujin scene, which seems to be what gets shown in a lot of manga. So stuff like Wotakoi, and Genshiken as well looks a lot more on that.
The first Genshiken is very men focused, but the second one, what is the second generation of Genshiken called again?
I think it's called
New
like
Genshiken
the second
or something.
Generation, or the second
generation
series, something along those lines.
The second one is all about Fujoshi. Also, the works of Nagata Kabi again. DFAB, I'm not entirely sure if she fully identifies as a woman. But she is a lesbian DFAB person. Working in manga, obviously. Yeah. Yep. Who else do I want to see? Other types of mangaka.
It's been really wonderful considering that we've gotten a lot more own voices works. Although, Boys Run the Riot is about a trans boy written by a trans man, so is obviously pulling a lot from his personal experiences. And this is something we see a bit more in Yuri and BL as well, of queer people using manga to kind of express themselves or tell their stories. And one focused on, Chi is a great example of that. She uses her manga as a way to talk about her transition, and her wedding to her cisgender husband, and kind of the differences within kind of the LGBT community, and most specifically trans issues in Japan versus the rest of the world. It'd be nice to see more of that kind of stuff being brought over, just in more specifically in relation to manga if you want, but I mean, more of it's always good in any genre, right? So
I would like to see something focused on, because all the ones that we've mentioned that are about female creators are either about stuff in a more independent or non-serialized sphere, or stuff that is focused around creators who are mainly doing stuff for shoujo and josei magazines. I think it'd be cool to see more content that is about women writing for shonen and seinen magazines.
I think Hiromu Arakawa has a series.
Yeah, she has an autobiography.
Yeah, which has not been released in English or published in English in any capacity, but I know that exists out there.
She drew herself as a little cow, as she always does.
Yay.
I haven't read that one, but it does exist.
I would love to see more I mean, there's obviously successful women mangaka.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. It's weird because for me, my representation covers a large variety,
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
being black and Muslim and being a woman. So like the women one just already gets knocked out of the ballpark. Like you guys are doing great, you're doing amazing. I
Mm-hmm.
wish there were more.
Mm-hmm.
But at Anime NYC, there was actually talking about having more mangaka being successful that are outside of Japan and not just having it be an exclusively Japanese thing,
Mm-hmm.
which would be interesting to have other people's opinions on. But just having, I don't know, just mangaka of different
Mm-hmm.
races and ethnicities just kind of be more prominent as well. Because there are some really good stories that are just don't have the funding for everything, and I wish
Yeah.
those people well in that endeavor.
Yeah, I think that's a great testament to Viz's and Tokyo Pops to a lesser extent in encouraging local comics creators to be published under them, um,
Mm-hmm.
and showing more of that representation. But a similar idea to like Riordan's like
Imprint, yeah.
brand,
Rick Riordan Presents or
yeah,
whatever.
that allows various people from various like representations to tell their stories in kind of the Percy
Mhm.
Jackson universe. So it allows, it's a platform that a large creator already has, giving a voice to lesser represented people, which I think is just really wonderful. That would be a really interesting thing to see happen in some capacity.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I think that like
Yeah.
what Tokyo Pop unfortunately did for what they called OELs,
Mm-hmm.
back in the day, like the reverberations from that are still affecting people's perceptions of like manga styled comics,
Mm-hmm.
especially from manga publishers. Um, Even now, but it's nice to see some like more, I guess, established creators with, you know, the company giving them more time and attention that they deserve.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Starting to sort of fix that brand, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I hope that that continues and that, you know, we're seeing like Seven Seas start to step into the game a little bit. They also have started asking for like webtoon and non-Japanese comic
Mm-hmm.
recommendations in their surveys, um, which their big like mega recommendation request survey for November is still up at time of this recording, so make sure you fill that out
And
for
you don't
sure.
need we don't need we don't need to request Shonen Note anymore, so thank you everyone.
Yeah. Instead, please request Colette wa shinu koto ni shita. This is my next campaign that I'm starting. But yeah, I'm definitely curious to see where that goes, and I would
Mhm.
hope that it would, you know, bring about more opportunities for non-Japanese creators of color,
Mm-hmm.
people from various countries, languages, and experiences. In terms of Japan, you know, it's always cool when you see a work coming from someone of like Korean or Chinese
Mm-hmm.
descent, or
Mhm.
anyone who's not Japanese, um, or even not fully Japanese. But it is still like rare. So, um, yeah, support it when it happens. Um, I don't know. The only one coming to mind right now is like, you know, En Young Choi, which
Mm-hmm.
is anime, but her succeeding the company from Yuasa was a pretty big thing, I think.
Yep.
I can't remember the name. They were talking about a French mangaka that was on the rise.
Radiant is the
I can't
Oh
remember.
yeah,
series.
that guy.
It is okay.
That guy who does
That guy.
that one series,
Yeah.
Bande dessinée
Radiant or
becoming
whatever.
super popular. Well, Bande dessinée having a lot of crossover with manga, I'm sure helps. And France having such a huge manga culture there, it makes sense.
Mm-hmm. But I mean, like, white people are fine.
Yeah, we don't need it.
Dang it. Well, at least, look, white people are fine.
I wish him well in his endeavors. Yeah, I guess I'll go on to the next question. We're getting down to the last couple. This is from @Meowth900. Do you think it's possible for any of these works to get anime series, or do they seem more fitting for a live action? I know Bakuman had an anime back in the day, but that's probably because of two things, Jump and the Death Note duo. You're correct. It got an obscene amount of anime.
3 seasons.
To this
75
day.
75 episodes.
Oh boy, guys. Oh boy. If you thought that series was boring in manga form.
Boring and sexist and just overwhelmingly terrible.
75 episodes.
Ugh.
Yeah.
Oh
my gosh.
No. Oh no. Oh, sweet summer child.
To be honest, most of the series we've been talking about, I think, are probably more fitting for live action.
I mean, Monthly Girls Nozaki-kun is a hilarious anime. Got an anime. Kakushi Goto also got an anime, as I mentioned, very recently, like a couple seasons ago. And of course, World's Greatest First Love has 2 seasons of anime, and some OVAs, and a movie, which has never been licensed in English, but does exist. So, there's a bit floating around. Additionally, I mean, anything... These are pretty, general, down-to-earth series, so they're absolutely doable in live action. More to that point, Bakuman also has a live-action film and has, like, a bunch of stage plays and stuff. So, just because...
Oh my god.
You have...
Can you imagine sitting in a theater being forced to watch a stage play of that thing?
My worst nightmare. But just because one, we have one doesn't mean it excludes the other. The series that I was thinking of that I talked about a little bit earlier that I think would really work for a anime is Yoshi no Zuikara, The Frog in the World Does Not Know the Ocean. Mainly because it really does have Barakamon vibes, and if you gave it an adaptation like Barakamon got, it would fit perfectly in that kind of small town, bunch of interesting characters from that small town that only small towns create, and lean a bit more into the comedy stylings of that creator. I think their manga and their characters tend to be... I mean, they're comedies, obviously, so, Yoshino Sensei really does play up the comedic reactions to a lot of stuff, and that works better in anime, typically.
Yeah. I know Princess Jellyfish got a really excellent anime that I love and adore very much. But in general, I think that Higashimura's work is really suited to live action more than anything else. And I think that a live action adaptation of Blank Canvas would be excellent.
Agree.
Anything you want to see adapted, Ellie?
As far as anything I would like to see adapted, I don't really. I haven't seen it. I know it's already having an adaptation, but I've only read parts of it, but I really want to watch Skullface Bookseller.
That's a great series.
Yeah, that was a fun anime. It was good.
I've seen and heard good things about it just from the small bits and pieces of it. I want to actually commit to watching it completely.
I think it's on YouTube, isn't it?
It's
Like,
on
legally?
Crunchyroll, especially.
YouTube?
I watched on Crunchyroll, I think. I watched it on something. And I think they're only 12-minute episodes, so it's a...
Oh
Yeah.
my gosh.
Yeah, it's a quick minute.
They're real short.
It's a quick sit-down watch.
It's on my everlasting list of like anime watches that I have not gotten onto. But
I was having a lot of fun just like watching an episode before bed. It's a nice cool down because it's really sort of soft and
Funny.
like laugh out loud funny.
It's better than me watching Yu Yu Hakusho before bed. You know, chaos, monstrosity.
There's nothing wrong with Yu Yu Hakusho, but also...
Yu Yu Hakusho's great.
But it'll probably get you pumped more than wanting to go to sleep, I think.
Yes. That's exactly what happened.
You gotta watch that with your morning coffee. That's the trick. But yeah, Skullface Bookseller Honda-san. The guy who plays Honda-san does a really great job with the comedic voice acting.
Mm-hmm.
Even though it's kind of weird that Honda-san is a woman in the manga and not in the anime.
Oh no, God, no!
It's fine. It's just a skull face. It doesn't change anything.
Yeah, it's just a skull face. It doesn't change her personality.
Okay, great, we're good. I thought it was like a big issue.
No,
okay, great.
It's fine.
No, it's all just the same. I feel like they probably hired this guy because he just did a really good job voice acting, and it didn't really matter what gender Honda-san was.
The skull
I mean,
face.
it's cool that she's a woman, but yeah. So, last question. Woo! From @Kazekun Forever. You may discuss this in the podcast itself, but are there any good manga about manga about manga by women and from a woman's POVs that's been translated that you can recommend? I guess we can do a quick rundown of what we've talked about. Blank Canvas.
Nagi Takabi's
What if
everything. And I'd say I'd add Still Sick to that pile as well. Because presumably that's by a woman. I haven't checked, but I'm pretty sure it is.
Probably. I mean, most Yuri is.
Mm-hmm.
Does BL Metamorphosis count?
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely.
For sure.
Hell yeah.
That's not about a creator.
Oh, yeah!
It is manga
I
about
did
manga.
it! Redeemed!
Yeah, we hadn't brought up the BL Metamorphosis because we've been talking about, like, the creator perspective, but that's a really fun series about, like, the fan perspective, specifically Fujoshi fandom, and, like, rather than focusing on, like, how hellish it can be, instead focusing on how wholesome it is and how it can bring people together. And it's very sweet
Mm-hmm.
and wonderful about intergenerational friendship between women.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Amen.
But yeah, so hopefully that's a good handful of recommendations to check out. And that's the end of our question list.
And with that, we have come to this episode of the Read Right to Left podcast. I just want to thank our wonderful guest Ellie again for joining us. That was a great time. I hope you enjoyed yourself.
I did. Thank you for having me. I've learned a lot.
And be sure
Thanks for coming.
be sure to let everyone know where they can find you if they're wanting to follow you, whether that's on Twitter or the Religiously Nerdy blog.
So you can follow me at the Basil K, which is TheBazilekay, or you can follow me on at Three Muslim Nerds on Twitter.
And do it, because they're great. Wonderful people to follow.
Oh,
So do it.
thank you. Thank you.
And so I hope everyone enjoyed the episode. Thank you everyone again for sending in your fabulous questions. There's a lot of fun, a lot of great discussion. Always good when we do have so many questions that we can really dig into like that. As always, you can find the podcast on YouTube, on my personal YouTube channel, Simply G, or you can follow us on Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, most of the major podcasting platforms. You'll be able to find us next month. Next month is December, and we all know what that means. Ray, we're doing our wrap-up for the year, talking about our favorite series, favorite debuts for the year, our exciting licenses and honorable mentions. It's going to be great. There's been, although 2021 has been a hell year, it's had some good manga. So
yes. At least there's that. Christ.
So lots of exciting stuff for us to talk about and hopefully share our thoughts and feelings about things. And so rather than send in your questions for next time, be sure to send in some of your favorite new series for the year 2021, whether they be just new debuts, ongoing things, or new licenses as well. That's always exciting.
Yeah. Specifically, we always ask you guys, because we will be giving our top 5 new series of the year, to give us your own top 5 lists, and we will read them out throughout the episode.
And laugh at your terrible taste. No, we never do that. We will only ever celebrate.
Everyone who listens to our podcast has immaculate taste.
We know this. We're the ones with the bad taste, Ray.
It's true. It's true.
But thank you all so much for listening. I am G from Simply G, and I will see you in the next episode. Bye till then.
Bye, guys.
Bye.